What's up YouTube, Capital G here, checking out a brand new quick play spell in the Forbidden series of cards coming out of Rise of the Duelist. I have always been a big fan of the lore behind these cards, how they kind of start with spells. You have Pandora from Greek mythology. She's going around, she's touching all of God's stuffs, his lance and his chalice and stuff. And then he keeps on yelling at her and he's like, look, stop touching my stuff, ho. And he then smites her down and then she tries to smite him and ultimately, she becomes the Dark Lord Link monster, but looks like she's still messing around with her shenanigans. My prediction, and I'll get to the review in a second, my prediction is that on our next Solemn card, he's going to come back and he's going to smite her for good, and that's probably going to be the end of her run. But I like how it's, it has monsters, it has spells, it has traps, all of it kind of correlates, or all of it kind of combines into one big storyline. Anyways, let's go ahead and check out this card. This is Forbidden Droplets. It's a quick play spell that's a hard once per turn. Its effect says send any number of cards you control or have in your hand to the graveyard until the end of the turn. Have the attack and negate the effects of an equal number of effect monsters your opponent controls. Your opponent cannot activate the effects of cards of the same type, monster, spell, or trap as the cards sent to the graveyard in response to this card's activation. Now let me point out at the beginning, because there are a couple of different translations of this card, YG Organization and Reddit being the main two. On YG Organization, which is the translation that I just read, they currently have it where your opponent can't respond with the effects of cards in response to this card's activation. However, on Reddit, it says that your opponent can't respond with the effects or even with cards. Of course, that would be the full spell speed 4 effect and power that you get out of something like Super Polymerization, where your opponent can't respond basically in any way. I'm inclined to believe that this card does have the full Super Polymerization power kind of built into it, considering you have to send cards to the graveyard as a cost, and if you're paying all of that, I kind of feel like Konami's going to give you that full Super Poly power. One other thing I want to point out, this card does not work with tokens, otherwise it would be broken in generators, but since you have to send cards to the graveyard as a cost, and obviously tokens can't be sent to the graveyard, it means that you can't use this card in conjunction with tokens. That would be like nuts in the generator deck. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about this card on its own merit. This is a card that has a lot of versatility and it does have a lot of power inside its effect. However, it's definitely not the most economical card. For those of you guys who don't know, this card is almost always going to be a neg2, because obviously you're activating this card to negate one of your opponent's monster effects and cut their monster in half, i.e. a shrink effect, but you're not actually killing that monster, so that's a neg1. And then with this card, you have to give up another card in addition to that just to be able to negate one monster. You have to either give up another spell or another monster, another trap that you have on the field or in your hand. So you're basically giving up 2 cards and you're not even guaranteed to kill one of your opponent's cards. So, neg2s are not something that a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh decks are interested in taking. However, we know that versatility is valuable in Yu-Gi-Oh! And if you're playing a deck, maybe like one of those synchro decks that drops a lot of TG Hyper Librarians on the field that can make enough advantage, maybe you don't mind giving up 3 cards if it means negating your opponent's entire, field and being able to stop them from even using things like counter traps to stop the activation of this card, because if you give up spells, traps, and monsters, they're not going to be able to respond in any way, essentially. And I do like the fact that it not just negates the monster effects, but it also does, cut the monsters, their attacks in half so that you can run them over a little easily. This card could even be seen as like a Dark Ruler No More that you could even use during your opponent's turn, which that can obviously be kind of nuts. Honestly, I wish that Konami would have made this card, instead of sending cards from your hand or the field to the graveyard, I wish they would have made you pay life points in increments of like 1,000. I feel like if they did that, where you could pay 2,000 and negate 2 face-up monsters, I have no doubt that this card would have 100% seen meta play. But honestly, I think that it's just a little too uneconomical for most decks. There are only going to be a handful of decks that can just afford to take neg2s and neg3s and not completely kind of implode. But it's a card that is interesting nonetheless, and it does have a lot of power. I just don't think it's actually going to see that much play. I'm more interested with the lore of this card and where Konami is taking this storyline, and the fact that they are continuing a storyline that I definitely like. But whatever you guys think of Forbidden Droplets, you leave that in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.